They handed Sam Delaney a check for $5 million in the grand ballroom of the newest luxury hotel in Charleston. 30 seconds later, he gave it away. Not to a charity, not to a cause. To a woman in a gray housekeeping uniform who had just been humiliated in front of 200 people for the crime of kneeling down to clean up a broken glass. Her name was Gloria. She was 58 years old. She had been cleaning rooms in hotels since before the man who owned this one had learned how to knot a tie. And on the night she was supposed to be invisible, the most beloved actor in America looked straight at her, folded a $5 million check into her hand, and walked out of a deal that would have made everyone in that room richer. What happened in the 90 seconds before he did that is the reason this story is still being told. And what happened in the 6 months after is the reason it matters. There is a hotel on the harbor in Charleston, South Carolina called the Meridian. It opened on a Thursday in April, and by Saturday it was the most talked about building in the state. The Meridian Charleston sits at the end of a cobblestone street, 2 blocks from the water, in a district where the live oaks are older than the country and the money is quieter than the trees. Rooms started at $900 a night. The rooftop bar poured a bourbon that cost $65 a glass, and people ordered it without looking at the menu, because looking at the menu was the one thing that marked you as someone who did not belong. Everything in that building was designed to communicate a single idea: you have arrived, and most people never will. The marble in the lobby was quarried in Italy and shipped in crates the size of coffins. The chandeliers had been assembled by hand over 11 weeks. The staff wore uniforms tailored to the individual, and they were trained, above all else, to be unseen, to move through the rooms like the temperature changing, felt, but never noticed. That was the rule. The guests were the show. The staff were the machinery behind the wall. And the man who wrote that rule was named Roland Crane. Roland Crane was 52 years old, and he had built the Meridian Collection into 11 hotels across 4 countries from absolutely nothing. He wore charcoal suits that fit like they had been grown on him. He owned a watch worth more than most of the cars in the valet line. When he walked into a room, the room adjusted. Voices lowered. Spines straightened. The staff found somewhere else to look. He had earned all of it. That was the thing people got wrong about Roland Crane. They assumed the arrogance was inherited. It was not. It was constructed, plank by plank, over 5 decades, on top of something he had spent his entire life trying to bury. Roland Crane grew up in a mill town in the Carolina foothills, in a rented house with a coal stove and a roof that leaked over the kitchen table. His father, Walter, was a porter at a resort hotel 2 hours away in the mountains, the kind of place where wealthy families came for the summer and left their manners at home. Walter Crane carried other men's luggage for 31 years. He opened doors. He said yes, sir, to men younger than him. And once, when Roland was 9 years old and had ridden along on a delivery, he watched a guest in a linen jacket hand his father $1, look at the boy standing beside him, and say to his own wife, not quietly, not caring who heard, "They breed early, these people. Give them the loose change, they think it's Christmas." Roland watched his father smile, watched him say thank you, watched him tuck the dollar into his shirt pocket and walk back to the luggage cart, because a man with a leaking roof does not have the luxury of pride. Roland decided at 9 years old that he would never stand on that side of the door again. He did not decide to be kind. He decided to be powerful. There is a difference, and it took him 40 years to feel it. He worked. God, how he worked. He bussed tables at 16. He learned the difference between a fish fork and a salad fork, not because he cared, but because knowing it was a wall he could put between himself and the boy in the mill town. He took a job at the front desk of a mid-tier hotel in Atlanta and studied the guests like an anthropologist, how they walked, how they ordered, how they made the staff disappear. He learned that the world he wanted was not built on money alone. It was built on the performance of belonging. And he became the greatest performer of belonging that anyone in the industry had ever seen. By 52, he had done it. He was on the other side of every door. And somewhere along the way, without noticing the moment it happened, Roland Crane had become the man in the linen jacket. He did not know that about himself. Most people who become the thing they hated do not. Which brings us to the night of the gala. The Meridian threw a party to announce its new global face. For 18 months, Roland's marketing team had chased one name harder than any other, and against every expectation, they had landed him. Sam Delaney. You know Sam Delaney. Everyone over a certain age knows Sam Delaney. 40 years of films, 2 of them the kind that people quote at funerals. He had been famous long enough to become something rarer than famous. He had become trusted. And he had done it while remaining almost aggressively ordinary. He drove a 15-year-old truck. He flew commercial. There was a photograph that had gone around the internet a few years back of Sam Delaney eating a gas station sandwich on the tailgate of that truck outside a hardware store, and the caption just said, "He fixed the old lady's screen door himself." Nobody could confirm the story. Nobody needed to. It sounded like him. $5 million. That was the number on the contract. 2 years as the face of the Meridian collection, a signing check presented that night for the cameras, the rest structured over the campaign. Roland's people had been stunned. Sam said yes. Sam's people had been quiet about why. He arrived at 7:40, 20 minutes before the presentation, and the valet almost turned him away. He had come on a motorcycle. Not a designer one. An old one, a machine with real mileage on it. The chrome dulled the way chrome dulls when a thing is used instead of displayed. He wore a canvas jacket gone soft at the elbows, dark jeans, and boots that had clearly walked a great many miles that had nothing to do with red carpets. The valet, a kid named Marcus, looked at the bike and the jacket and started to explain that the event was private. Then Sam took off his helmet, and Marcus's face did the thing every face did. "I think they're expecting me," Sam said. And he said it gently, the way a man says a thing when he genuinely does not want the other person to feel foolish. He shook Marcus's hand. He asked his name. He asked how long his shift was. And then he walked into the most expensive building in Charleston in a jacket worth $40, and the whole architecture of belonging that Roland Crane had spent his life constructing did not know what to do with him. That was the crack in the room. Sam Delaney did not perform belonging. He simply belonged everywhere, to no one's permission but his own. And a man like Roland Crane could not help but feel it as a threat, even as he smiled and shook his hand for the cameras. The ballroom was full by 8, 200 people, investors, press, the kind of Charleston old money families who summered in the mountains and had opinions about forks, champagne in coupes, a string quartet in the corner, the staff moving along the walls like the changing of the light. And Gloria Reyes was one of them. Gloria was not supposed to be in that room. She was head of housekeeping, and housekeeping did not work the floor at galas. But the Meridian was new, and the night was enormous, and when a banquet server called in sick at 6, the event manager had done what event managers do and pulled the most reliable person in the building to fill the gap. Gloria had been reliable for 31 years. She had cleaned rooms in 4 cities. She had raised 2 daughters on a housekeeper's wage and put one of them through nursing school on it. Her husband, Ernesto, had driven a delivery truck for 26 years until the stroke took the right side of his body 18 months ago. And now, Gloria's paycheck was the only paycheck, and the small house on Reed Street that they had spent 9 years paying down was 4 months behind because rehabilitation is not free and dignity is expensive when you are poor. She had told no one at work. You do not tell them. You come in early. You leave late. You smile. And you keep the machinery invisible. At 8:20, a guest near the center of the room, a man 3 glasses into the $65 bourbon, turned too fast and knocked a champagne coupe off a passing tray. It shattered on the marble in a bright, glittering spray, right in the middle of the room, right in front of everyone. And Gloria did what she had done 10,000 times. She moved. Quick, quiet, a folded cloth already in her hand, down on one knee on the imported marble, gathering the glass so that no one in an $800 dress would step on it. That was the moment Roland Crane saw her. He was standing at the front, beside the podium, 30 seconds from the presentation he had waited 18 months to give. And there, in the dead center of his room, on his night, in front of his 200 guests and the cameras, was a woman in a gray uniform. On her knees, visible, the machinery had failed. The wall had cracked. Someone could see the help. And something in Roland Crane, something 9 years old and standing beside a luggage cart, something that had never once been healed, reached up and took hold of him. "Get up." He said it across the room. Not loudly. He did not need to be loud. The room had already begun to quiet for the presentation, and his voice cut clean through it. Gloria looked up. "I said get up." "What are you doing? Who let you out here?" He walked toward her now, and every step was a performance for a room he had forgotten he was performing for. "This is a private event. Do you understand what tonight is? Do you have any idea?" "Sir, there was glass. I don't care about the glass." "That is what the floor staff is for. What are you, housekeeping? Housekeeping is not to be seen." That is the entire. He caught himself mid-sentence, aware of the cameras, and made it worse by lowering his voice into something colder. "Go home. Take off the uniform and go home. We'll discuss whether you still have a position on Monday." 200 people watched a 58-year-old woman get to her feet on a floor full of broken glass, with a cloth full of the mess in her hand, and be told, in front of all of them, that she was done. Gloria Reyes did not cry. That is the part people always remember. She stood up straight, and she nodded once, and she said, very quietly, "Yes, sir." 31 years of yes, sir. She turned to walk out. And a man in a canvas jacket, standing near the back, set down his water glass. "Excuse me," Sam Delaney said. He was not loud either. But when Sam Delaney speaks, rooms have been trained by 40 years of film to listen, and this one turned as one body. He walked out into the center, to the small field of broken glass, and he did not go to Roland. He went to Gloria. He crouched down in his $40 jacket on the imported marble, and he started picking up the glass with her. "Careful there," he said to her, softly, just to her. "That corner piece is sharp." Then he looked up, and he found Roland Crane across 10 feet of stunned silence, and he asked him a question. "How come?" 2 words. Roland blinked. "How come she can't be seen?" Sam asked. His voice was mild, genuinely curious, entirely without heat. "She's cleaning up glass so nobody cuts their foot. I'm looking at her. Am I not supposed to be seeing her either? Mr. Delaney, you don't understand how these events. I think I might." Sam stood, slowly, a piece of glass in his palm. He was still holding it, careful, the way you'd hold something that could hurt someone. "I've been in this business a long time, Mr. Crane. I've been in a lot of rooms like this one. And I've learned that you can tell everything you need to know about a man by how he treats the person who cleans up after him when he thinks the cameras are pointed somewhere else." He turned to Gloria. "What's your name?" "Gloria," she said, barely a breath. "Gloria," he said it like it mattered. "I'm sorry this happened to you tonight. It shouldn't have. It wasn't your fault. You were doing your job, and you did it well." He looked at her hand, the one with the cloth. "You're bleeding a little. You should get that seen to." She looked down, a thin line of red across her thumb. She hadn't felt it. That was the moment the room broke open. Not with noise, with something quieter and much harder to survive, with 200 people simultaneously understanding exactly what they had just watched, and exactly whose side they were on. Roland Crane stood at his own podium and felt the floor tilt beneath a lifetime of construction. The event manager, panicking, tried to save the night. She stepped to the podium. She said something bright about the presentation, about the honor of the evening, and she brought out the check, the enormous ceremonial thing, 4 feet wide, $5 million printed across it, made for a photograph. And behind it, in an envelope, the real one, the paper one, the one you could actually deposit. She handed the envelope to Sam Delaney and gestured to the podium and the cameras and asked if he would say a few words. Sam took the envelope. He looked at it. Then he looked at Gloria, who was standing there with a cut thumb and a folded cloth, holding herself very straight, waiting for permission to leave the worst night of a hard year. And Sam Delaney walked over to her and put the envelope in her hand. "This is for you," he said. She stared at it. She did not understand. "Sir, I can't. You can." He closed her fingers around it, gently. "It's already yours." "I'm not signing tonight." He said the last part to the room, over his shoulder, without raising his voice. "I don't think this is the right partnership after all. But the money's real, and it's hers now." Ernesto's a lucky man. He knew her husband's name. Later, no one could figure out how, until they realized he'd asked the front desk clerk, quietly, in the 4 minutes between the incident and the check, who she was and whether she had family. He had already made his decision. He had just been waiting to learn who to give it to. Then Sam Delaney nodded to the room, said "Good night, folks," and walked toward the door. But he didn't leave the building. He turned down a service corridor, and he went looking for Roland Crane. He found him in a small office off the back of the kitchen, a windowless room that smelled of coffee and steam, where Roland had retreated the instant the cameras stopped. He was sitting with his elbows on his knees and his head down. He did not look like the man who owned 11 hotels. He looked like a boy beside a luggage cart. Sam knocked on the open door. Roland looked up, and his face hardened into something defensive and cornered. "Come to enjoy it? Go ahead. You humiliated me in front of everyone I've spent. I didn't come back here to ruin your night," Sam said. He came in without being asked. He pulled out the second chair, the cheap one, and he sat down in it, and for a moment he didn't say anything at all. He just let the room be quiet. "You want to tell me what that was really about?" Sam said finally. Not a question. An opening. And Roland Crane, who had not told anyone the true thing in 40 years, told a stranger in a canvas jacket about his father. He told him about the mill town and the leaking roof. He told him about the luggage cart and the linen jacket and the dollar, and they breed early, these people. He told him about the 31 years his father said yes, sir, to men who never learned his name. He told him about the promise he made at 9 years old, and how he had kept it, and how somewhere in the keeping of it he had become the man who said get up to a woman on her knees. She reminded me of him, Roland said. His voice had gone somewhere far away. That's the truth of it. She kneeled down and she said yes, sir, the exact same way, and I. He stopped. I've spent my whole life making sure I would never be the person on that floor again. And I never once stopped to think about who I was becoming instead. Sam listened. He did not interrupt. He did not rush to comfort. He let the man finish the sentence he had been not finishing for 40 years. Then, Sam said something of his own. I lost almost everything once, he said. People don't know that. There was a stretch, must have been 6 or 7 years, where I couldn't get hired. I'd had a couple that did well, and then a run of ones that didn't, and this town decides who you are on Tuesday and forgets it on Wednesday. I lost my wife in the middle of it, not to another man, to the sickness, the long kind. And I sat in a rented apartment with the phone not ringing, wondering if any of the 40 years had been real, or if I'd just been a face people liked for a while. He turned his old ring on his finger, once. What got me back wasn't a comeback. It was a grip on a movie in Georgia who didn't know who I was, or didn't care, and treated me exactly the same as everyone else on that crew. Fed me, told me where to stand, called me by my name. Sam looked at Roland. That man never knew what he did. He probably thinks he just did his job. But he reminded me that a person is worth something before anybody points a camera at them. That's the whole thing, Roland. That's all any of it is. The room was very quiet. She's got a husband named Ernesto, Sam said. Had a stroke a year and a half ago. They're behind on the house. She didn't tell anybody, because people like Gloria never tell anybody. He stood up. You've got a choice about who you are for the rest of tonight. I'm not going to make it for you, but your father carried other men's bags for 31 years and never once got to hear one of them say he was sorry. You've got a woman out there you can still say it to. He put a hand on Roland's shoulder once, and then he left the little room and walked out of the building, and he got on his motorcycle, and the golden light was still in the sky. He never saw what happened next. Roland Crane sat alone in the coffee-smelling room for a long time. Then he stood up, and he straightened his charcoal jacket, and he walked back out into the ballroom, where 200 people were still standing in loose, uncertain clusters, no longer sure whether they were at a celebration or a funeral. Gloria was near the coat check, waiting for a taxi, the envelope held against her chest with both hands like something that might fly away. Roland walked the length of that ballroom in front of everyone, and when he reached her, he did the one thing that no one in that room, and no one in his whole life, had ever seen Roland Crane do. He said her name first. Gloria, not you. Her name. I owe you an apology, and I'm going to give it to you the same way I gave you the insult. In front of all of them. His voice was not smooth now. It shook a little, and he let it. What I said to you was wrong. It was cruel, and it was untrue, and it had nothing to do with you. You did your job perfectly tonight, the way you've done it for 31 years, and I treated you like you were invisible because I have spent my whole life terrified of being invisible myself. That's not your burden. I'm sorry. Your job is safe, and I would consider it a privilege if you'd let this hotel be a place you're proud to have built. Gloria Reyes looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Once, the same single nod she had given when he fired her, but it meant the opposite thing now. And somewhere in the back of the room, one person began to clap. Then, another. Nobody let it. It rose on its own, the way applause does when it is real, and it filled the grand ballroom of the Meridian Charleston until the string quartet didn't know whether to play. That is where the video usually ends. But that is not where the story ends, because an apology is a moment, and what Sam Delaney set in motion that night took a great deal longer than a moment to become real. Here is what happened after. Gloria Reyes deposited a check for $5 million on a Monday morning at a credit union on Meeting Street, and the teller had to call a manager, and the manager had to call the branch director, and Gloria stood there in her good coat while 3 people confirmed that yes, it was real. She paid off the house on Reed Street that afternoon. The whole thing, the 9 years and the 4 months behind, gone in an hour. She did not quit her job. People assumed she would. She did not. The house is paid, she told her daughter. Ernesto's care is paid. What am I going to do, sit still? I like the work. I always liked the work. Nobody ever asked me if I liked it. Ernesto Reyes started a new rehabilitation program in June. The good one. The one they could never have afforded. By September, he could sign his own name again. By the following spring, he could walk the length of the porch and back, on the house they owned, in the evening, holding his wife's hand. Roland Crane did not go back to being who he was. People waited for it, waited for the apology to have been a performance, for the old Roland to return once the cameras were off. He didn't. Something in that coffee-smelling room had come loose in him that could not be reset. In August, 4 months later, the Meridian Collection announced a new internal policy across all 11 hotels. Every member of staff, at every level, was to be greeted by name by management. The word invisible was struck from the training manuals. Roland struck it himself, with a pen, in a meeting, and told the room why. He raised the housekeeping wage first, before the front-of-house wage, on purpose, because his father had been housekeeping and no one had ever raised his. And he did one more thing. He established a fund, quietly, no press release, and he named it the Walter Crane Fund, after a hotel porter who had carried other men's luggage for 31 years and died, believing that was all he'd ever be. The fund pays for education, medical care, and emergencies for hospitality workers and their families across the Southeast. In its first year, it helped 140 people. Gloria Reyes sits on its board. She insisted the applications be read by someone who'd actually cleaned a room, and Roland agreed, because she was right. Then there was Daniel. Daniel Okafor was 26 years old, and he had been Roland Crane's executive assistant for 2 years, and on the night of the gala he had been standing 8 feet from the podium, watching. Daniel had come up hard, from a family that had also known leaking roofs, and he had attached himself to Roland the way ambitious young men attach themselves to the powerful, studying the arrogance, mistaking it for strength, learning the fish fork and the salad fork in the art of making the help disappear. He had wanted, more than anything, to become Roland Crane, and on the night of the gala, he watched Roland Crane say, "Get up," to a woman on her knees, and he felt something curdle in his chest, because he recognized the man he was watching. It was the man he was becoming. Daniel did not sleep that night. In the morning he asked Roland for a meeting, and he had a resignation letter in his pocket. Because he had decided he did not want the life after all, he never handed it over. Because the Roland he met in that meeting was not the one he'd resigned from. That Roland asked him to stay and help build the fund. And Daniel Okafor, who had spent 2 years learning how to belong, spent the next 2 learning how to be useful. Which, it turns out, is a harder and better thing. He runs the Walter Crane Fund now. He knows the name of every person who cleans the Meridian Charleston. He learned that from a woman named Gloria. and from a stranger in a canvas jacket he only met for 90 seconds and never spoke to at all. Sam Delaney never mentioned any of it. Not in an interview, not on a stage, not once. Somebody put a clip of the gala online, and it traveled the way those things travel, and a reporter asked him about it months later, and all he said was, "Oh, I just didn't think it was the right fit." And he changed the subject to the movie he was promoting, and that was the end of it. He didn't take the credit. He was already gone before the applause started. He never even knew Rolland apologized. That's the part I keep coming back to. I've told this story a lot of times now, and every time there's a piece of it that snags on something in me, and it's not the part you'd think. It's not the check. $5 million is a lot of money, and it changed a family's life, and I'm glad. But money is the easy part of this story. The check is the thing that makes it shareable. It's not the thing that makes it true. The thing that snags on me is that Sam Delaney was already gone. He crouched down in a field of broken glass. He handed away a fortune. He sat in a coffee smelling room and told a stranger the truest thing about his own worst years. And then he got on an old motorcycle and rode home. And he never once turned around to see whether any of it worked. He didn't wait to find out if Rolland changed. He didn't need to know. He did the decent thing, and he let it go. And he never learned the ending. Most of us couldn't do that. Most of us want to see the person become better because of us. We want the receipt. And I think the reason this story has lasted is that some part of us recognizes we are being shown a kind of grace we don't actually possess, the kind that helps a person, and then lets go of the outcome. Because the helping was the whole point, and the applause was never the point at all. I don't know if I could give away $5 million. I'd like to think I could. But I know the harder thing isn't the giving. It's the leaving before the thank you. It's doing the right thing when there's no one left to see you do it. That's the part I can't shake. I hope you can't either. This story is a work of fiction. Sam Delaney, Rolland Crane, Gloria and Ernesto Reyes, Daniel Okafor, the Meridian Collection, and every place and event in it were created for this narration. Any resemblance to real people or companies is coincidental. If a moment in this story reminded you of someone in your own life, a person who does the invisible work and never gets thanked for it, tell me about them in the comments. Say their name. I read them, and I read them because those are the people this whole story is really about. If you know someone who needs to hear it tonight, send it to them. That's a small kindness, and small kindnesses are the entire subject of this channel. And if stories told this way, slowly, and with respect for the people in them, are the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe, and I'll have another one for you soon. Take care of each other. I'll see you in the next one.